Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Dance Teacher Pep Talk. I am your host, Amanda, and I am so glad you are here. This is a space for dance teachers and anyone interested in teaching dance who is looking for motivation and fresh ideas. As teachers, we spend our days motivating and giving pep talks to our students, and now this podcast is a pep talk just for you. We hope that it helps to ignite new ideas and even work through some deep dance related thoughts before you head into the studio. Thank you for your support, and now let's get into today's episode. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Dance Teacher Pep Talk. Today's episode is a tougher one because a lot of the time with this topic, I feel that there are some heavy feelings and emotions. And this is an episode that I've wanted to do for a while, but felt like this time of year can be relevant because as we are closing out our season, we may begin registering for new seasons, and this might be something that comes up for you. And so today we're talking about when dancers leave. And I don't mean graduating, I mean moving on to different things, different sports or activities, different dance studios, different opportunities, taking a break from dance. There are so many different ways that this episode may fall into a category of that. I want to start off this episode by saying that I am not, nor have I ever been, a studio owner. So I will not be sharing that perspective on this, though I know that the concerns around a student leaving also include the loss of a customer in terms of finances, and may even include at times difficult energy or tension if the split was not a good one. So I do want to make sure that I keep that in mind and that I'm sensitive to that. But I think that today's episode is my goal for it, I would say, is to sort of shift our mindsets, because the thing that I see a lot, especially like on social media with dance teacher forums and things like that, is that when dancers leave, a common theme that I see is people taking it really personally and being really affected by it in an upset way, which in parts is understandable. And so I'm hoping that today's episode will help to give maybe a different viewpoint on it or some realizations around it. I'm going to be really honest too, and just as I said, I'm not giving a studio owner perspective. I'm also not going to be giving the perspective in this episode of dancers owing us anything, that by them leaving, that they owed it to us to stay, that they owed it to us to push through and to continue on with us. I'm not going to be giving that view. So if you feel this episode may not be for you, you can move along or maybe keep on listening and see if maybe, like I said, this will change your view on it. So to start off today's episode, I'm going to connect my thoughts to one of the important lessons I've shared through my 35 years episode, and that is do not take it personally. Immediately when a dancer leaves, there is hurt, there is sadness, there's all of the memories of what was, and now the reality of what will not be anymore. And those feelings are valid. You have taught and spent time and shared so much with the student, but they're moving on sooner than you thought that they would. And the first thing I would say with that is to feel that, because it is a loss in a way, and you can grieve that. But right after that, sometimes the wheels start spinning. Maybe you're starting to question, what could I have done differently? Did I do something? Did I not give enough? Did I push too hard? Did I push them to burnout? And more. This is where it is important to, as I said, not take this personally. And why? Each person we teach is an individual who leads an individual life and an individual existence. I strongly believe that we can inspire, we can motivate, we can give of ourselves, but that isn't going to change the fact that this person may have different dreams or paths that do not include us anymore. And I'm going to speak very candidly and say that through my years, I've had many instances of students moving on to different places and different activities. And yes, initially, I always feel sadness. We give our hearts to our students. And so I allow myself to feel that. But I need to look at what they are doing for their life path, for their trajectory. And over the years, I've grown to this point where I am happy for the time that we did get to share, for the experiences we had. And maybe that was all I was meant to be a part of in terms of that dancer's path for the time being. So if you're in the mindset when a dancer leaves of feeling hurt as if, the dancer owed it to you to stay, maybe looking at it in a different light, looking at this as the individual and what are they going on in their life to do. I also look at this situation much differently since becoming a parent. And it is interesting because there are so many views out there. There's the view that once you choose a sport or an art or any type of extracurricular, that you stick with it and you see it through and that you make the commitment because yes, there will be hard times and yes, there will be good times, but you have to see it through. And there is also the view that life is short, try things on. How will you know if you like something, if you don't try it? There's so much out there, etc. So being a parent, I think about my daughter and my past experiences. I love dance. I always have. But there were times I didn't like it. There were times I hit major plateaus. And I think that if I quit at that time, would I have gone back? Honestly, I think the answer for myself would be yes, because I had that initial love. I just was burnt out. I needed a break, but I kept going. And I'm not quite sure that was the healthiest choice for me. At that time I did cut back, and I will say that was helpful because with this love in my heart, I added back on when I realized all that I was missing. After having that rest, after taking that time. But that might not be true for everyone. Someone else may quit and not return. And there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe it just wasn't right in their heart. And I think about my daughter and the way that I hope to guide her if she were to ever come up to me and say, I don't want to do this anymore, is does it make you happy? Ask them. Does this make you happy? Does dance make you happy? Does it fulfill you? Does it inspire you? And if there ever comes a day where it doesn't, then I think things should be reevaluated because I don't want her or another student to feel placed in a box. Like just because I started dance as her activity, I don't want her to feel she has to stay there. If she came up to me and said she wants to start soccer or has an interest in singing or whatever activity it may be, I'd want to foster that. I'd want to help her reach towards those dreams. And the same goes for our students. A lot of the time there's a transition from middle school to high school where they start to get more interested in, high school activities or high school sports. And, this is their life. So how do we support them in that? And I think that is going to make our impact as well a lot different because are we going to be the dance teacher who is going to shut down their dream of playing a school sport or saying like, no, you can't do that because you won't be able to do the dance classes that are on the schedule or, oh, no, you can't do that and still be a committed player on this team or whatever, do we want to be that or do we want to help them to find their dreams and their goals? I know that's also easier said than done because, of course, I'm also of the same mindset where if we're doing too much, that can become a conflict too. And what we need to do is then help them to find a balance if there is one, and then help them to see what it is that they are valuing more at this time. And so for them, if they're trying to balance the sports schedule and the dance schedule, and it's not really working out and we can't have it all, we can't do it all and have it all, either trying to work out a plan or seeing what is most important, helping the dancer to find that because they're young and they're figuring it out, but they're also wanting to try these things. And so, I look at my students who leave and the experiences I've had in the past very differently now. They wanted to try a high school sport. They wanted to take on a new activity. Great. This is their one life. This is their one opportunity to live out their desires and hopes. If they miss dance, the door is always open. But I would never want to hold someone back from the life that they want to live because they felt obliged to stick to something they have been doing for years. And I do, however, feel it is important to fulfill contracts and commitments. I think that is a very valuable life lesson. So yes, maybe you aren't enjoying dance anymore and you want to move on. Let's finish out this year. Let's finish out your contract, just as you would give notice for a job in the career world. So another scenario. What about the students who decide to leave to attend a new studio or school? This one I think can be sad because they are dancing still, but not with you. And maybe it could even feel like a breakup. So yes, there's sadness, but I really had to reframe my mind in a different way. I was only meant to be a part of their dance journey for the specific amount of time or the amount of years that we had. They are seeking inspiration and fulfillment in a new place. And maybe it is about creating more of a challenge. Maybe it is about starting fresh in a new environment. But whatever it is, it still comes back to it is their life, their dream, their goals, and they are dancing with what you have helped to give them for a time. They are taking a step in their dance career. And there is an element that we should be proud for them for that. They're taking their training seriously and they want to try in a new place. Because whatever reason is, this is not the current fit for them. And they want to grow and they want to flourish. And maybe they feel that will happen best in a new environment. And maybe it will. And maybe it won't. But looking at it as they're still continuing their dancing. You have built some inspiration in that dancer enough that they want to continue on. They're just looking for something a little bit different. And again, trying so hard not to take it personally. I've heard there are areas of the US that are definitely more competitive, and I'd even go as far as saying maybe unsupportive, but I live in an area of the US where the dance community is very supportive. Convention, competition, it's an experience of learning, of encouraging, of inspiring. And so I cannot speak from the perspective of like the cutthroat, competitive poaching, situational types of things. But I heard that, that does go on. And I'm sure that is a way more difficult thing to deal with because maybe the dancer is constantly searching for the next best thing. And then they're being influenced by, the sales or pulling from other studios. So like, that is a whole different thing that I really don't have a lot of experience with, but I thought we could kind of talk about it in the sense of what I have gotten from it. So, when we look at the current climate of life that we're living, so much is instantaneous. So much is given right away. Amazon will deliver to your door tomorrow if you place an order this morning. Cell phones give us instant access to so many things. And I remember how long it took to dial up AOL just to get on the internet, let alone complete a Google search for something. And now it happens just within seconds. So I do feel a part of this can be attributed to dancers leaving because they may see strong, talented growth and progression at a studio, and then they feel they need to be there to accelerate their growth to have it now. And I feel that is also something difficult to deal with. But I think that this is an opportunity to create a space of openness, of discussion when necessary, to be there and help our dancers stay on track with the goals they are setting for themselves. I definitely feel the dance teaching that I'm doing now is way different than the dance teaching that I was doing when I started, because I realized how important it is for me to really understand each individual student's goals. Like, where do they see dance taking them? Why do they dance? I think those are really important questions we have to find out for our students, because the way that we teach them is then going to be different. So like, for example, if somebody just dances because they love to dance and that's their reason, well, we're just going to encourage that. We're going to foster that. We're going to continue to fuel that. If we have a dancer who dances because they want to win first place at a competition and they want to, win all these accolades and things like that, like the training for that dancer, if that is really what their goal is, and we can't judge that goal because it is what they want and it is their dream. How can we help them to reach that, and maybe their track is going to look a lot different than the one that says they just dance because they love it and they just enjoy it. And I really strongly feel that if we are uninvolved in their learning and their dreams, they will want to be uninvolved with us. So showing interest in helping them to gain, where it is that they hope to be, I think is so, so important. And, aside from the situations that I talked about with dancers leaving, there's also the situation of a bad leave. We should talk about that too. And this one was difficult for me, but it took me a long time to, understand this, and I see it now completely. So this is what I've learned from that is personalities are clashing, right? It's not working out. We're not making each other happy, and the dancer breaks away. In this case, I think some lessons can be learned, but once again, we cannot take it personally because personality clashes are something we are always going to face in our life. We are not always going to be everyone's cup of tea, just as everyone is not ours. And we can't make everyone happy, just as not everyone will make us happy. And I think in this situation, it is important to remember if there is difficulty in the energy, it isn't going to work. You can try to mediate and come to a place where things may get better, or create a plan of how to mesh and work better together. And hey, that might work out, but it might not. And if it doesn't, it is something both parties need to move on from. Just as I mentioned before, you were only meant to be a part of their story for that amount of time, and they were only meant to be a part of your story for so long. So though we aren't taking it personally, is there a lesson learned though in these types of splits? Is your communication clear? Are you listening? Is there situations that came up that you could have handled better? This hurts. It definitely hurts. And from my experience, it really messes with your mind and makes you start doubting everything about your career. But allow to feel that, because at the end of that is the growth. If I look back at every uncomfortable moment I have had in my teaching career, I can say that for one, I felt all the emotions, anger, sadness, upset, and more. But on the other side of it, did I become a better educator? Did I become a better communicator, listener? Yes, I did. I am better now for it than I was before, and that is a part of life. So instead of looking at a dancer leaving as something really bad or something really disappointing, look at it in the ways I mentioned in today's episode. You will have people in your life for different lengths of time, and you will be a part of people's lives for different lengths of time. And what a gift those moments are. Cherish that, make the memories, and be present, because that is all we ever really have. I always love the words and wisdom of Eckhart Tolle. There's so many quotes that I could share here, but I think what I'm trying to relate all of this to is the notion that the past has happened, the future is not here, but the present moment is all we ever really have to hold. And that notion, I think, is one that will make for a more meaningful, connected, and vibrant life, because we are here now, and that is what is real. Not the what happened or what will happen, but what is happening now. And I know it's hard when a dancer leaves. I know that there are so many feelings around that, but there is also so much that we can learn from it. And also there is so much that we can still be so proud of for that dancer, for that person, for following their path, for following their dreams. And so how can we still be a cheerleader for them through that? How can we be there for them through that, even if we are not their mentor anymore, even if we are not guiding them? We can still cheer them on because they are following their path. And so that is really the message I want to drive home today, because I think it's so important to cherish the time that you had together and know that that was all you were meant to have. Even though you're probably sad about what isn't to come, there is, like I said, so much learning and so much gratitude that can come from the situation of the time that you did have together. So every time you enter a classroom, with every student you get to experience, I want you to really look at the gift of being a part of each other's lives for the time and space that you have. And if that dancer moves on, or if that dancer decides to go elsewhere, or if they start to decide to do a new activity, that is their story. It's not yours. And just hold on to the beauty of the story of the time that you did have together. So though today's topic was definitely a more difficult one, my hope was that it may shift the mindset of when a dancer leaves from something that is really bad and really negative to something that can be seen in a positive light, for you to see the growth and the progress, and for you to just also find the joy that was the time that you had together. So I want to thank you all so much for listening. If you feel called to share this episode with a friend or colleague, I would so appreciate it. And we are still going to be posting on Dance Teacher Pep Talk Instagram. I may lessen up the classroom tips during the summer just a bit, because summer is a little different for us, but I will throw some up there when I can. But Instagram is a great place to hear when a new episode is coming out. And of course, if you follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you'll be able to get a notification whenever a new episode is available. So I want to thank you all so much for your listens and support. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week ahead. Thank you so much for listening.